If you're new to Redcat Gen 7s, this is just a quick video to show you some good upgrades, and I'm going to concentrate more later on the Vader skid plate that I just installed. First of all, it's a beat up car. I beat this car pretty bad when I drive it, so that's why I bought it. First thing I'll talk about, it'll be important later, is the difference between the stock axle. This is where the servo mounts, they call that an SOA mount for servo on axle, and I ended up adding that to my portal because it didn't come with it. But as you can see here, there's not a lot of space between the bottom of the axle, this part here, and the ground. It's not, you can't even put two fingers under it. When you get the portal, it's quite a bit higher. I can pretty much put my hand under that if I need to. There's no way to do that here. Basically, just your fingers can go under one and not much else, but it sits pretty low, and that little bit of extra ground clearance makes a huge difference. So I don't know if you can see the difference in there between the two, but it does. Anyway, this is the input shaft where the drive shaft hooks up to the right here, this part, and later on we'll talk about that, the orientation of this, whether it's pointing down, level, or up, and that will become important later in the conversation. But let me switch gears, and this video is primarily going to be about the suspension geometry and the Vader skid plate. First, I'll start off by showing you the stock suspension, and the video I took earlier sucked, so I'm not going to put that out in the world and have it suck. So I'm just going to show you a picture of it. When I do, notice that the links for the suspension go on the outsides of the frame rail, front and back, and then I'll come back and talk a little bit more about it. Okay, in that video, did you see how the suspension links have to go from the outside of the frame across the frame itself, and then centering into the input links on the axle? There's two, and actually there's also a third one for the top links. So the bottom ones keep it from tipping that way, and the top ones keep it from basically the bottom ones hold it, and the top one keeps it from tipping. So without a triangulated position, there would be no way for this thing to remain stable. So if you don't understand that, that's fine. But when you come into the bottom of this one, plug is in the way. This is the skid plate here installed. It's a harder, thicker plastic. It's almost like I was told it was Delrin, but it seems like it might even, it's pretty hard. It's stiff. But anyway, the one that comes with the box is kind of flexible, and I don't know, it's built to a price point, so it's not really that good. Also, before, these two links were located in different places. Same for these two. This one was here, this one was here, here, and here. Now they don't have to cross frame rails. They are inside the frame. Before, this bar had to come around and back to here, and when it compressed, it would always hit this bar, and you can actually see, if you're in person, the paint is taken off of the edge of this where it has ground against the where it's ground against the bar. And same for this side, it's actually got marks where it was grinding against this bar here. And the front ones weren't so bad, they were kind of okay. The reason the fronts were actually worse, because with the bar starting out here and having to proceed inward, if you draw a line like that, it was actually getting into the travel of the tire, and the tire could hit that. blank here. Now there's probably 1/4 inch of distance in there, and it can no longer hit that. So it's definitely a good upgrade. I did have a few issues with the geometry of the suspension. Remember we talked earlier about the orientation of the shaft, whether it's pointing down, level, or more of an upward canter. Ideally, it should point straight out on front and back, because the top links are straight out front and back, and it's just a geometrical thing. When you have two links like that, they like to have corresponding angles so they don't bind. It's much nicer on the components. But this one was actually tipped a bit differently. It was tipped too far down, so by taking the mount point from here, actually it was too far down, but by moving it from this top hole to the bottom hole, it rotated it just enough to be able to make that at the right distance. This one was a little bit trickier. It was pointing down towards the ground and then up, and that would have destroyed this little joint here. It's a constant velocity joint, and it would have ruined it. So now it's pointing straight out, and how I did that was I tipped the top of the axle forward, and that rotated this whole thing. And in order to make that happen, I went from the original mounting hole for the upper control arm and drilled another hole just in front of it. And obviously had to do the same thing on the other side, but it didn't take much, just a little bit of push at the top, and it brought that just enough to where it comes straight out, and basically straight out here too. Camera angles, the camera kind of tilts a little bit. It might be even up a little bit here, but it's pretty close. Not enough I'm going to worry about it. But it did possibly extend the wheelbase a little bit. I'm okay with that, because an extended wheelbase with the front wheels pushed a little farther forward will give me a better approach angle on steep rocks. It'll also bring the weight a little bit more forward at steep climbing angles, so it's less likely to tip over, and just a little bit longer is a little more stable. But Vader skid plate is a good thing to buy. I really like it. It's going to keep everything clear. Nothing's going to ever hit a frame rail again, because everything is inside the frame rail and it can't get that far out. But it's definitely worth it. I'm going to go out and try it on the trail, do some rocks with it later on, and I have high hopes for it. But when I first bought this truck, I thought, oh, it's Redcat, it's kind of junky and it's cheap. And it does have a low initial price point. That's a fantastic thing about it. One thing I did not realize, that you can just do a few minor upgrades, like 3-piece metal wheels, put a little bit of weight in the nose, and it'll really keep the nose down when you're at steep angles. And I have 2-stage foams inside the tire. It's stiff on the inside and softer on the outside. That will prevent it from tipping over at big side angles. So it helps a lot. All these little things, anything you do, it makes it better. Brand name is just a starting point. Certain ones that are going to have such a high starting point will never catch up. But I'm not going to ever say that a Redcat can't do something that another truck can, because this one is actually proving that it can. I also have a Traxxas TRX. I love that one too. And crazy thing is, I find myself driving this one more than that one. Hope these videos help. But the portal axles, they're huge. I added this plate in the front just to protect my servo arm in there. That's kind of a delicate part that you don't want coming directly into contact with rocks, so I gave it a little bit of a shield. And that was a cheap part. I cut aluminum I had in my garage, bolted it on, and I will keep up with most people with this truck now. Only one thing left I really want to do is maybe put a little more weight in the front and some stickier tires on there. But it's kind of turned into a pretty good little truck. I'm not going to say that it's perfect, but that's all I got for now. Highly recommend all of these things. It takes it from a budget crawler to one that will keep up with just about anything on a trail.